podcast, where we share stories and strategies from the game's most fascinating minds. No matter where you are in your poker journey, there's always something new to learn. So let's get right into this week's episode.
Welcome back to the Red Chip Poker Podcast. I'm Zach Shaw. Joining us as always is James Splitsuit Sweeney. Welcome to the show again, sir.
Thank you so much. Good morning.
Good morning. This is going to be a cool episode. We've got a couple questions from members, and they're both related to fear. Now, this is something that is permeating our world right now as we record this, so maybe this will apply to things other than poker. But let's get specific with the strategy around handling fear at the table. And I'd like to read you our first question, if I could.
Excellent. Fire away.
So Jenk writes, I want to ask you if you have any recommendations as to how to beat the internal fear of bluffing. I have a general tendency of making value bets, but when it comes to pure bluffs, I seem to realize as if I have an internal mechanism to hold me back with a terrible feeling of fear. I call this the psychology of bluffing. Would you have a paper or book to come over this psychology? All right. That could probably use a little editing, that question, but we get the general sense. The specific fear around bluffing, and I'm no stranger to this. I feel a definite fear of bluffing too, especially when I'm playing in, the bigger games I play in, which happen to be the 1-2 games at the casino.
Yeah, so let's kind of hack through it, because this is really at the end of the day like a very, very common thing, whether or not people kind of realize how deep it is in their game and in their psyche overall. So I think if I were to distill this down to like a single thing, I think this is just risk aversion. Would you agree with that, or do you think it could be something else?
I've been known to be somewhat of a risk-averse person, so I can feel that, yeah.
Yeah. So I think overall humans just inherently are risk-averse, right? We don't like losing. And even if you think about like the way that your brain remembers things, chances are you don't remember a ton of winning sessions, even though you probably have plenty of them. But chances are you remember a couple really, really big losing sessions, whether you made massive mistakes or whether you just ran really bad, maybe a combination thereof. The losses kind of permeate and echo in our brains, whereas wins just kind of like in one ear, right out the other, and you forget about it by morning. So if you always kind of keep that in mind, that your brain is going to remember terrible things that happen to you and really forget the good things, it kind of makes sense where this risk aversion comes from. And I think that's kind of the big thing is first and foremost is just understanding what that is, right? If you can remember that, then you're less likely to let losses or fear of a possible loss kind of get in the way. Is that kind of making sense as a starting point?
Yeah, absolutely. And with fear also comes anxiety. And that's kind of the feeling I feel more when I'm staring down at having to make a big bluff, is your mind almost is talking you out of doing what you should do because of this feeling of risk aversion.
Yes. So I think what's really important about this is twofold. One, understanding how it affects you, both at kind of the macro level, like your life as a whole, and also the micro level, like do you actually pull the trigger and bluff in this exact spot? But then there's also the second part that I think a lot of people, for whatever reason, ignore, and that is that your opponents, 9 times out of 10, are dealing with this exact same thing. It is very, very difficult to not be risk averse. Now, some people are like massively, massively risk averse, right? They take like no risks in life. And when we're talking about poker players, we're probably not talking about that level of risk aversion, but we're still talking about like people don't want to lose. People don't want to take risks that could lose. People definitely, especially when they're playing live, do not want to feel stupid, right? If you could distill like live down to that, it's a group of people throwing circle discs around, throwing plastic cards around, trying not to look stupid while doing so. And that is the fear. Like you think about like what's the average nightmare, the biggest nightmare that people have? Talking on stage while naked. Right? And what is that at the end of the day? That's all just, it's fear and looking stupid. That's all it is. So understand that your opponents have this exact same issue. So it's good to do some of like the GTO analysis or understand like, how often you should be continuing, what's general MDF in this situation. But by the same token, If your opponents are typically risk averse and typically aren't bluffing often enough, it can very easily start guiding you away from just like continuing with every single bluff catcher because you quote unquote have to, when really they're not bluffing often enough to justify it. And this risk aversion goes both ways, for the betting side of things and also for the continuing side of things. Again, people don't really want to continue with bottom pair, even if they convince themselves that they're good, simply because they don't want to risk money and lose, because they're going to lose some percentage of the time, and they don't want to feel stupid the times they're wrong. Whether or not they show their cards, they're going to feel stupid. So I think it kind of boils down to that in a nutshell. Is that sounding about right, or is there anything else to add to here?
Yeah, I mean, I can see that fear of, looking like a idiot is a big thing. That has never been a particular thing for me, I guess, but that's probably because I've been a performer and actually talked half naked to people on stage before. But the thing that happens to me more is overthinking. And definitely when I was younger, I would have anxiety issues because I would, just think and think and think. And, you think yourself into a panic attack, into physical manifestations of the anxiety. And, this is a far more benign circumstance. But at the poker table, I find myself in that situation where I'm just kind of thinking and thinking and thinking. And, one thing I've learned more recently in life is sometimes in life, you just got to stop thinking and pull the trigger and see what happens. And you shouldn't be so, risky that you just do whatever comes to mind. But there's a definite balance to strike there.
Yeah. So I think that's exactly right. And this is kind of where I always go with this conversation, is that it really comes down to, in my opinion, the off-table work that you've done or know that you need to do. Because when you've done the off-table work on bluffing, even just at a bare bones basic math level, right? Do you understand the break-even percentage of your bet? Do you understand roughly, can you estimate with any sort of closeness to a frequency on how often your opponent would fold? Compare those two numbers and you're good to go. You can identify a bluff very, very quickly. The issue is that most people don't do that work. I mean, we know how many people play poker overall. We know how many people are members of Red Chip or members of communities similar to, and like very, 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 very small percentages of the overall player pool study in any meaningful capacity. And even the ones that do study aren't necessarily studying as hard as they know they should be. So the reason why I bring that up is because if you've studied this stuff out, your confidence to be able to pull a trigger, identify when the trigger should be pulled, is going to increase massively. So the way that I look at this is like you have the two parts of your brain that are kind of on when you're in a situation where you could bluff. You have the logical part of your brain and you have the emotional part of your brain. Now, if you haven't done the work to increase the logical part, that part's just going to flip right off. And all you're going to have on is your emotional part. And your emotional part's going to revert back to risk aversion, not wanting to feel stupid, not wanting to lose anything. And all of a sudden you just start making the passive mistake and you don't bluff. And that's, again, very, very common. But if you can do the logical work and you can do the study off table, again, and like, it's not going to be like months and months and months worth of work. Like you can do like 20 minutes a day for a couple weeks and you have like a much better starting point for estimating this stuff in real time. The stronger the logical part of your brain gets, the more you can start to kind of dial down the emotional part. And the goal at the end of the day is really to turn that logical brain up as high as possible, turn the emotional brain down as far as possible, and then just rinse, repeat, and implement. But the issue is if you don't do the logic center stuff, you're always going to revert back to emotions. And your emotions suck. Your emotions are going to create so much pain to you. And worse, it's going to create pain that you like don't even identify correctly, right? Because your emotional brain is telling you, hey, don't risk that because you could lose. So because you didn't risk it, your brain gives you a +1. But that actually wasn't a +1. That actually cost you a good chunk of money because you didn't take a profitable bluff. And you could only get to that point by turning on the logical centers and getting those stronger and stronger. Otherwise, your emotional brain's going to kick in and good luck. You're just like the rest of poker players. I mean, most poker players are just pure emotionally driven because they just don't study the strategy. Makes sense, but it's going to be painful.
It's like almost a form of tilt to have that fear, micro tilt within a hand. And it's not as obvious both to the player or to the opponents, but it's happening all the time. That's a good point. I never really thought about how what I'm going through is something that everyone else is going through.
Yeah, and I mean, let's take you because you mentioned doing stage performance. I know you do music and you perform that as well. The more that you've practiced, the more rehearsal you've done, the more fun performance probably is, right? Because you're just stepping in, you're doing what you already know exactly how to do. You're not having any of the fear, or at least the anxiety would be much more minimal because you're just having fun. You're just implementing what you know how to do, right?
Yes, absolutely. Totally comfortable.
Yeah, and poker is the exact same way. I look at talks that I've given, be them poker talks or business talks, whatever they are, the more prep work I've done, so again, the more I've ramped up those logic centers, the less emotional stuff I have. Sure, maybe I'm a little nervous right beforehand, but that fades like almost instantaneously as soon as we start going because my left side of my brain is just kicking and doing everything, and I don't have time for the right side of my brain. The emotions can go to bed. I'll deal with them later if they even come up, but chances are they won't because I'm just totally in the left side of my brain.
Oh yeah, man. I mean, and I can compare my first few sessions at the poker room. I always tell the story of my first session ever. I was so nervous and I had no idea what was going on that I bought $300 in white chips. I specified to the cashier, I want them all white, but I wasn't playing limit. I was playing no limit. And so talk about identifying a fish at the table.
Pretty much.
And I think I just like got it all in with aces on a super wet board. Just like a horrible play, but that's besides the point. I can look back at those first few games and I was just so nervous and so, everything seemed so amplified. I was used to playing, quarter games at home, and here we were playing for, $200-300. So definitely, though I'm a recreational player now, and I continue to have this fear of bluffing that Zhenk has. I think that's a really good point. Like, don't overthink it. It's just about studying, preparing, and then getting that experience and feeling comfortable and that the poker table is your domain.
Yeah, exactly. And just you have to start being comfortable with the fact that you're going to make mistakes. Or put a different way, you're going to be wrong some percentage of the time. I mean, that's baked into the game. It's very, very rare you find a spot where your opponent's going to fold 100% of the time. Just doesn't happen, which inherently means that some percentage of the time your bluff's going to fail. But as long as it works often enough and you know that mathematically you're like, yeah, that seems good enough, or, I think so, but I'm not 100% sure. I'll study that when I get home. Then all of a sudden you just start developing more and more confidence to pull triggers when triggers are there. And you've mentioned a couple times, I think it's actually a really good point, especially in today's day and age, you just have to pull some damn triggers. And obviously we want to make good decisions as much as possible, which is why we do study, whether it's poker study or anything else you want to improve on or do in life, do a little bit of work, do a little bit of study, do a little bit of thinking, and pull a trigger. Sometimes you're going to be wrong, but being wrong is why we have a bankroll in this game. Because, some percentage of the time we're going to fire an all-in bluff and it's going to fail and we're going to lose a buy-in. But that's why we play with multiple buy-ins. We don't play with one, we play with multiple. It's why we bring multiple even when we go to the live rooms, because we might need to reload because sometimes things are going to go awry. And even take something like this podcast, right? If I had waited until we were the most polished and perfect podcast known to man, I knew everything about podcasting. I knew everything about getting a podcast out there, promoting a podcast, creating it, editing it, thumbnail creation, descriptions, all the stuff. If I waited until all of that was perfect, we still wouldn't have a podcast. Right. But we do, because we said, you know what, this is good enough for what we can do. This is something we can get out. This is something we can iterate on and improve. And poker strategy is no different. You pull some triggers, you go study it, you make better decisions in the future. Mistakes happen. Don't beat yourself up for a mistake. Don't panic about a loss. Just rock and roll, move forward, continue working off table in between sessions, and you're going to do much better. But if you just panic and get in your head, welcome to hell. Because that's where you're living.
Well, and I would say to all our listeners, if you want to get out of that hell and you want to prepare, as we're talking about today, definitely check out Core. It's our all-in-one poker platform, poker training platform. Tons of video, tons of lessons, built for busy people. redchippoker.com/edge is where you can find it. But let's get into the second question here. It's another shade of fear at the table from Matar. I hope I pronounced that right. He says, "Hi, James. I have issues concerning moving up in stakes. How can I overcome my fear?" And this was one thing I wanted to kind of add on to your last series of comments regarding bankroll. I can imagine that some people are experiencing fear because they're playing out of their bankroll or too high, and that would be a legitimate reason to move back in stakes and not necessarily, you don't want to prepare to play in a game that you can't afford to play in. But how can we kind of manage our bankroll and overcome fear in terms of moving up in stakes and playing with, completely new set of players and new strategies?
Sure. So I've talked a lot about taking shots in general, and I think it's very important to take a shot-taking mentality because there's something that happens when you say, okay, today I'm playing X, and tomorrow I'm going to play two times X, right? So moving up to a stake that's twice as big, be that playing from like 1-2 and then moving up to 2-5, or you're playing 25 NL online and you're thinking about jumping up to 50 NL, like there's something, in my opinion, that's really rough about saying I'm a 25 NL player today and tomorrow I'm a 50 NL player. And worse, if the 50 NL shot goes poorly, or you have to move down for any reason, lose a couple buy-ins, need to go rebuild, there's something like 5 times as bad about saying, okay, I'm a 50 NL player today and tomorrow I'm a 25 NL player. Like, it just creates a lot of mental pain, and I think like a mental prison to say and like pigeonhole yourself to a specific stake. In the move up process and the move down process, it doesn't matter. So I actually don't consider myself a player at anything other than like a wide range of stakes, because I do. I'll play anything 5, 10 and below. So I play a whole bunch of different games, and as such, why would I like pigeonhole myself and say like I'm a 2-5 player and what, now I feel like an idiot when I'm playing 1-2, or I'm a 2-5 player and now all of a sudden I panic when I'm playing 5-10? Like, no. And this kind of goes back to turning on the left side of your brain, the logic center part. Because if you can completely understand that we are playing with bankrolls and big blinds. Bankrolls, big blinds. Understand that, and everything is fine. The issue is people think about everything in terms of dollars, and dollars equal rent, dollars equal college loans you're paying off, dollars equal food on the table. But no, it shouldn't. We're playing with big blinds. Is this a smart investment of big blinds? Hell, I go buy anything, and I still think about it in terms of big blinds. I still think about it as a percentage of a buy-in. Doesn't matter what it is. I could go buy a truck. I could go buy a roll of toilet paper. And that's kind of a goofy one nowadays because you have to pay, $5,000 for a roll of toilet paper. But yeah, you get the point. It's just one of those where, like, if you can think about it in terms of big blinds, then you don't panic about the fact that a big blind is $10 or a big blind is 10 cents. Because they're just big blinds at the end of the day. So I think if anything, starting from that point will feel much, much easier. You're not an XYZ stake player. You are a poker player that plays a wide range of limits, and you're making all decisions in terms of big blinds. Is that making sense?
Yeah, that's a great way to frame it. It's weird because when you talk about bankroll, you're talking about dollars. But once you get away from that, you're abstracting things. And I know I've been tracking my bankroll for some time now, and that has really helped me to look at things more in terms of like maybe, okay, I lost, but I lost X percentage of what I have to play with here. And that's not as bad as if I were to think of losing that in a financial sense. And I think a lot of us who go to casinos, and obviously I avoid the table games pretty much 99% of the time. But, we have this mindset of like a responsible gambling mindset, let's say, of we're going to bring to the casino or make it available in our bankroll only as much money as we would feel comfortable losing, and saying, all right, well, that was a good time, even though it was an expensive good time. But the reality is most of us are playing out of our life rolls, especially us recreational players. So really good point on the abstraction there.
Yeah, and just for the record, you can look at your bankroll in terms of dollars. You can also look at your bankroll in terms of number of big blinds at all of the different stakes you have available. So right. I think that's almost a healthier way of looking at it. And one of the things you mentioned, like live players, right? When they go to a card room and you have live cash on you. The way that I approach that, and it's probably just a mental trick that I've learned over the years, is I then treat that session as if all of that money is zero. Meaning, say I brought $5,000 with me because I'm going to go play 2-5. Yeah, that's a lot for 2-5, but you get the point. I don't treat it as I have $5,000 in my pocket and every dollar I lose is painful. Rather, I go to that session with $0 and anything I walk away with is great. And it's just a mental trick, so that way I'm not like sitting there panicking like, oh damn, I'm down, $80. Who the hell cares? No, you're up, 49.20, and that's pretty damn good. So, you don't write that in your winnings and losses on your bankroll tracking that way, but it's a mental trick to say like the money is already gone. So anything I walk away with is fine. My grandma always taught me early on, she was like, whenever you go to the casino, you just treat that like you're going to a movie, and that's just your entertainment budget for the night. And the more and more you are in the recreational side of things, I think that's probably a decent way of looking at it. The more professional you are, of course that's not entertainment. That's all investment in your career, whether you're playing semi-pro or fully pro. But especially if you're like really fearful about money, just rinse it. Like, the money doesn't exist. It's money that if you walk away with any of it back, be it a percentage or a ton more, great. But like, you can't be risking or fearing any sort of risk, because then it's actually going to trickle right back to the first question. You're not going to want to fire bluffs because you're not going to want to lose. But if you're not really like this, poker is gambling. Like, it's not gambling and then like, going and playing roulette where like the house edge is just going to wipe you into oblivion and like you have no chance of long-term win. Like, you do have a chance of long-term win in poker. But as the rate gets higher and higher, that gets tougher and tougher. As the game gets tougher and tougher, then you need more study in order to make sure that you can actually generate a positive win rate. But at the end of the day, like, it has win rate potential. So if you are thinking about it from the investment perspective, it's still gambling. You're still going to have some winning days. You're still going to have losing days, and you need to be comfortable with that. If you're not comfortable with that yet, work on it. Like, go play Chutes and Ladders and lose a bunch of games, because, you need to get comfortable with losing. And there's a lot of luck baked into this game, and you're going to have losing sessions. So you need to get over it, like ASAP.
Right. And there's micro stakes to cut your teeth, and, you don't have to go into playing 2-5 right away. And it's the sort of thing where, just like we've been saying all along, it's about building that experience, feeling like the table is your domain. And I love that idea that we're, it's almost like a tournament mindset. I mean, when you play a tournament, that money's gone for the second you sit down. So, yeah, your grandma had some great advice.
Yeah, right. She always does. So it's kind of get like more specific in the shot taking thing. Like, I think it's important to have a shot taking mindset, just simply because there's going to be lots of shots to take in life, be them business opportunities, be them poker opportunities, be them, relations, like dating is, as far as I'm concerned, like that's shot taking. You're going to spend money and time dedicated to one specific person. That's a shot take right there, because you're saying yes to that, which inherently means you say no to everything else, or at least everything else related to, other spouse potentials, whatever it is. So I think it's kind of important to, when you're looking at shot taking specifically, don't get mentally attached to the money. Don't get mentally attached to the next stake. And the biggest thing that I can remind you of is that it's still poker at the end of the day. And there's still going to be play, right? It's not like you play the exact same game with the same 9 people every single day, and all of a sudden you're going to go take a shot and it's going to be a brand new lineup and you're going to have no idea what to do. First and foremost, you have some semblance of an idea of what to do in a brand new situation where you don't have information yet. If you don't, chances are you wouldn't be in a shot to take a shot in the first place, if that makes sense.
Totally.
So you have some idea of what to do. You have some idea of how to generate info and decide what to do with that info, strategically speaking. So don't sell yourself short like you know what to do at your current limit, but you have no freaking idea what to do with the next limit up. Because that's not the case. The fact that you are thinking about taking a shot inherently means that you've been doing something right in your current limit. If you haven't been, then you wouldn't be moving up or even thinking about moving up. You'd be thinking about staying where you are or moving down. So don't sell yourself short that you're an absolute nothing at the next level up. And the biggest thing that I can suggest related to that is don't think that you have to change your strategy totally overnight and overhaul the entire damn thing. Start with what you're currently doing, because what you're currently doing must be doing something at least sort of right in order to be where you are to have this available opportunity to take a shot. One of the things that I made the mistake of when I was trying to upgrade from 50 NL to 100 NL online is I kept telling myself that 100 NL was going to be at minimum twice as hard. And I kept just massively adjusting my strategy every single time I tried to jump and take that shot, be it for a weekend, be it for a few sessions, be it for a couple weeks. I always got in my head and told myself the game was harder, and I had to make these weird creative plays, and I had to just get out of my comfort zone all the way. And then I just made massive mistakes and would have to move back down to 50, feel really, really crappy about it. And then it would be another month before I take another shot. What happened on the final one, where I finally clicked and moved up to 100 full time at that point, and then eventually started shot taking at 200, was I said, oh, I'm just going to take what I'm doing right now and go play it at 100. And it worked because I know how to play poker. I know how to beat a game, maybe not crush the game, but definitely beat the game. And I'm going to just do what I do and make decisions and make adjustments as I need to. And it was so much easier. It was so much less stress. And the shot worked and it clicked. So again, for most people, it's actually not as much of a money issue as they think it is. It's more of a mental issue of thinking this game is going to be so much tougher. Like, do you understand? You can have fish at 1-2 and you can have massive fish at 5-10 and you can have massive fish at 25-50. So there are bad players everywhere. There are good players everywhere. And yes, the good players get a little bit better as you go higher and higher from level to level up, but it's still poker. They still make mistakes. Every single player does. We're all humans. So don't talk yourself into oblivion. Don't make your life hell. Set aside 2 buy-ins at your normal limit and go take a 1 buy-in shot at the next level up. Or go set aside 4 buy-ins at your current limit and take a 2 buy-in shot at the next level up. If you lose it, go rebuild at your normal limit. If you win it, maybe take another couple of shots. Maybe start making that a higher density of the games you play. Because again, you're not a 100 NL player who's playing 200 today. You're a player that plays a wide range of games. 200 NL and 100 NL just happen to be both of them.
Yeah, that's a super great point on the fish existing at, or Rex existing at every level. I was just going through Ed Miller's The Course, and for the 3rd or 4th time, and was surprised to see all the advice kind of later on as he goes into 2-5 and 5-10. There's still going to be these weak players, and you can apply some of the same strategies you did at 1-2. The only time I ever took a shot was at 2-5, being seated there accidentally by the floor people. And, I eventually quit the game because my bankroll, I was on a downswing, and I was kind of this isn't where I want to be bankroll wise. But I played for about a half hour, 45 minutes, and I was so stunned that the only thing that was different was the bet sizes. It really still felt like a 1-2 game with maybe a little more thought being put into it by the other players.
Right. And that's why you have to think about things in terms of big blinds, right? Because if you think about it in terms of money, it's petrifying. It's too big. It's uncomfortable. You probably aren't used to that. So that sucks. But if it's big blinds, you know what to do against, a 5 BB bet or a 25 BB double barrel. You know what to do against all those things. So don't panic about it because it's new dollars. And I'll give one little thing that I do just because I think it's sort of important. I'll give 2 things. So if you're playing live, one of the things I would do, assuming you have poker chips at home, is set yourself up with your normal buy-in. So if you normally play, say 1-2, you're thinking about taking a shot at 2-5, set yourself up with a buy-in of 2-5 in front of you, be it $500 or $1,000, whatever that is, in legit physical poker chips right in front of you. And get used to cutting out those bet sizes that you would be using in that next level up. First and foremost, so you feel comfortable grabbing the correct number of chips. And secondly, it just starts to kind of reframe your mind of these are chips. This is not money. This is just chips. These are just big blinds, which I find really, really helpful. That way you're not making physical blunders at the table and then feeling more uncomfortable and more self-conscious and feeling stupid. And again, we're back to the first issue very, very quickly. The second thing is something I've done. I don't suggest everyone do it, but it's something I've done with success in the past, is I will jump up 2 limits online if I'm trying to take a shot. So if I normally play 25 NL and I'm trying to take a shot at 50, I might actually just go play a really quick, 40 hand session at 100 NL. The whole reason being is that I completely reframe it. I'm way out of my financial comfort zone or whatever those limits happen to be that pushes you there. So that way when you go play 50 and L, it's oh, this doesn't seem so scary. This is half of what it was just 5 minutes ago when I was playing twice the limit. So it's just little things you have to do to mentally trick yourself. Because remember, your brain is completely fighting you. Poker in general, and things like this are, I think, very, very atypical for our brains to comprehend. And as such, it's tricky. It's the same thing with trading and investing and stuff like that. It's all of a sudden we're talking about this financial instrument of money, and money means safety and comfort. And now all of a sudden I'm talking about possibly losing some of that, and that feels terrible. just trick yourself. Your brain is stupid. All of our brains are very, very stupid. All you have to do is say, all right, brain, here's what we're going to try. This isn't money. Let's figure out how we can work with this together.
Yeah, that's great advice. I mean, we have to abstract and get away from that fear. And I hope that these tips have helped Cenk and Matar and a lot of other people out there. And I guess to wrap it up, as we said before, we're in this age of fear permeating society in many ways with the coronavirus. However, we're also at a time of great introspection, and a lot of people are looking at their lives, looking at their past lives, so to speak, and thinking about what they're going to do in the future. And this is great advice for that. A lot of people fear moving out of that homeostasis of, whatever they're doing that might be making them unhappy. And now they realize, hey, I can actually take a shot and do something new. And, if you need to abstract that in your personal life, that's also a useful technique, right?
100%. Or even your professional life, right? If you were in a job and just got totally displaced and now you're jobless, either for a season or just your company just completely folded due to Corona, like you might be in a situation where you have to take a shot in some sense. So spend some time and think about it. Again, get the left side of your brain really ramped up so that way you can override the fear. You're not making decisions out of fear and panic and desperation, which is a really, really bad spot to make decisions from. And think about what you want to do. Think about what your skill sets are. Think about the opportunities that are in front of you. Whenever there's a recession or depression in any capacity, there is a tremendous amount of room and opportunity created. And you don't need heaps and heaps of money in order to take advantage of those opportunities. You just have to, get your brain out, think a little bit, think about what your skills are and how those skills can translate to an opportunity. And in poker, that's simple. In business or even starting something small, it can be a little more complicated, just because there's so many different things to consider. But get in there, take some shots, think about what you need to be doing, think about what your skills and strengths are, and don't let fear override this stuff because it's too easy. Fear is a very, very cheap currency and your brain constantly wants to deal in it. You have to turn the emotions off so the fear just, goes and takes a nap. You can get some actual freaking work done.
Right on, man. Get out there and pull some triggers, people. And please write to us. You can write to me, zac@redchippoker.com. And tell me about your battles with fear and tell me how you're overcoming it, whether it's in poker or your own life. And we love to hear from our listeners. And once again, just need to plug Core because that's where we go to be prepared to feel like poker is our domain. So check that out if you're not a member already at redchippoker.com/edge. James, thank you so much once again for providing these nuggets of wisdom, not just poker wisdom, but life wisdom.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me, Zach.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode. But don't stop learning now. Head over to redchippoker.com. You'll find everything you need to get better today. Join our free, friendly strategy group and start talking poker with our coaches and community. And listen, if you're ready to take poker more seriously, sign up for Core, our $5 a week complete training platform built for players who have limited time to study. Core is packed with over 100 bite-sized lessons from the fundamentals to advanced strategies, quizzes, achievements, discussion threads, and more. And for the bravest of heart, we invite you to check out our pro membership, which includes 24/7 access to hundreds of videos, all of our playlists, all of our crash courses, and more. If you want to see what the top 1% of players are studying to keep their edges razor sharp, visit redchippoker.com/Ruby. That's RUBY, and get a special deal on your first 3 weeks. Until next time, run good, play better, and get there.